Rebel Force Radio presents
Experimental Unit Clone Force 99. The defective clones with desirable mutations. They call themselves the Bad Batch.
The Bad Batch.
This is the Bad Batch After Show.
All right, well, I think this is it. Unto the Breach. No, Into the Breach. Unto the Breach. That's Shakespeare. This was sort of a title that was paraphrasing. Once more under the breach, my dear friends, from Henry V. So I started looking at it. That got into my head, and I'm like, wait a minute. It's been a long time since I read Henry V. I only read it because I had to. As a theater major, and I had to read a lot of Shakespeare. And I love Shakespeare stories, don't get me wrong, but I just can't, the iambic pentameter and all of that, it's just never, it's like a foreign language, so it never really stuck to me. But there's so much, and even in modern storytelling, so much that sometimes evokes Shakespearean tropes and things. So I got into this, and I'm like, oh yeah, I think Henry dies in that battle, the Battle of Harfleur, but he doesn't. Because I keep looking for clues, like, is this a clue that the fate of the Bad Batch is sealed with, this kind of into the breach? This is the type of language that they're using in these episodes. And there are other potential foreshadowings in this episode that we'll get to, but we'll be stripping it all down here this week. Rebel Force Radio, the Bad Batch After Show, counting down to the end of not just season 3, but the end of the series. Yeah, it gets more real with each passing episode that this thing is really winding down. And I also find myself liking the characters more and more each and every week. And so I don't know, in a couple of weeks, if I'm going to be ready to let go. I'll certainly not be ready to let go of doing these after shows. These are a lot of fun. So there's more Star Wars happening on Disney Plus in the coming months. So we'll be together again, but not likely talking about Bad Batch. So we'll see if how you all feel. This is a call-in show. We'll be putting up the number later on. We want you to be active in our chat and on the phones. And I don't know. I'm certainly going to miss the Bad Batch. We'll find out if this guy is going to miss the Bad Batch. You know who I'm talking about. That's, of course, my good friend and yours from Chicago, Jimmy Mack.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Star Wars fans. I'm already missing the Bad Batch. I mean, we didn't really get any character moments with them or anything this week. It's all just charge ahead to try to build up to this dramatic rescue that the whole season's been pointing towards. But I was looking for something a little bit bigger from these guys. I was looking this season. It almost seems like the Batchers have been kind of in the back seat and
sidelined maybe.
Yeah, I mean, really, Hunter, Wrecker, there's been very little exploration into their characters throughout this whole season. I would have thought by now they would have built up a militia of disenfranchised clones, and they all would have gotten together to charge Mount Tantiss, but it just appears that this is the Batch are on this mission by themselves with no outside help. I mean, those guys will probably show up at the last minute, probably to help them seal the deal.
Right.
But
you're waiting for the cavalry to come in, right?
I really thought that this series was building up toward the second Clone War. And I felt that way since season 1. And now with only 2 episodes left, I'm starting to get a little bit nervous.
But what about all the clones in Mount Tantiss, though? I mean, they do have those clones.
True.
So the help could be coming from within. But I'm with you. I thought that they would have picked up more along the way, or that we would have known that maybe Rex has access to more and more soldiers.
It seems like Rex does. It seems like that's something they've established. Yeah, he's been going around trying to help out clone troopers in need when they get cast aside by the Empire or imprisoned maybe. I don't know. We don't know what Rex has been doing. This whole series is probably setting up the next animated series, Adventures of Rex. So we're just going to have to wait. That's the thing with franchise entertainment these days. There's never the big event anymore. There's never your WrestleMania anymore. Every week it's WWE Raw. It's never the main thing. Instead of getting big battles, we're just seeing wrestlers standing in the ring with microphones threatening each other. Where's our WrestleMania? Is the Bad Batch going to have its WrestleMania moment? Is it going to have its big event with 2 episodes left? Or are we going to just get nothing but WWE Raw for the rest of the
Well,
run of this?
I think I think there's a lot of truth in what you're saying. I'm going to have to hold total, final judgment until we see these next 2 episodes. But you're right, Jim. If this just leads into the next thing, by the time we get to the end of episode 15, then I'm gonna ask for my money back on the ride. I think. Let's get.
It would taint what has been a pretty fun experience.
Yeah,
following along with these characters in this story. But I just want some substance behind it. I want something big to happen, really big.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to be the case with the Bad Batch season finale.
Yeah, you wonder. I mean, I don't think that the Marvel franchise has ever really recovered much after Endgame. Like, Endgame was their WrestleMania, and they've struggled, it seems like, to get it back going since, to get the same momentum. Clearly, they don't have the same momentum now as they did going into Endgame. There's a lot of reasons for it, but is that making Lucasfilm a little leery about committing to some big, as you said, kind of WrestleMania moment? Now, the Filoni film is supposed to be that for the Mandoverse. Will they get cold feet? Will they worry about maybe repeating the Endgame scenario where then, okay, now what do you do? At this point, no, it's very interesting. I did, like you, expect a little bit more out of this episode. Got a few things, we'll talk about it, but as I said in previous after shows, the conversation doesn't have to just be about this episode. So if you've got something from a previous episode you want to bring up, or just the series in general, please do give us a call. The number to call is 708-866-1737. That's 708-866-1737. We'll be checking in with Tyler Page, our official call screener and show observer. He will be screening calls. And yeah, it doesn't have to be about this episode. We know there are sometimes their episodes are a little thinner than others, but we like to pick it apart no matter how much meat is on the bone. We'll grab the scraps, and this episode is no exception. We're talking about Season 3, Episode 13, Into the Breach, not Unto the Breach, as I mentioned before. And directed by Saul Ruiz, written by Brad Rowell, and story editor, as always, Matt Miknovitz. And original air date on this episode, for those of you listening into the future, April 17th, 2024. 2 more episodes. And Jim, we're getting 2 single episode drops. We're not getting a 2-part finale, as far as I know, though we don't know what the length of that 15th episode is going to be. The runtime on this, about 23 minutes. I wouldn't be surprised if we got kind of a double batch in terms of runtime on that 15th episode. Kind of hoping so after this one.
Yeah, fingers crossed. But I don't know. I mean, it seems like every episode has been consistently within that 20 to 25 minute range. And the reason they do that, I think, is primarily if in the future they would like to repurpose this content and put it out on one of the Disney cable channels, they can insert advertising. Note, they've done that with the Young Jedi Order show, or whatever they call it, Young Jedi Adventures. That show was targeted to be a Disney Plus exclusive program. And now it's on the Disney channels all the time. I see it flipping around. I was flipping channels. I landed on it. Wendy says, "Oh, what's this? Oh, they're so cute." And I said, "Oh yeah, this is the thing. It's really kiddified. I don't pay much attention to it." And Wendy said, "Oh, if our boys were still little, you would be eating this stuff up." And I'm like, "Yeah, guilty."
Right. Okay, right. Of course. Is there I haven't watched it. Is there a charm to it? Do you find it or?
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nothing really to sink your teeth into.
I'm sure not.
In the limited exposure I've had to it, occasionally there are references to things in the Star Wars universe, which I think is kind of fun.
Yeah.
But Yeah, story-wise, it's very preschool,
Yeah, yeah. High
preschool level
Republic
Star
era,
Wars.
though, right? Is it High Republic era?
Oh, yes. Yes,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
is. Right.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Well, let's talk about Into the Breach. All right. So Omega, last we left her, she was getting shown her new home by Hemlock, and when we open this episode, she's waking up. This seems to be like, I'm thinking maybe her first night. She had just spent her first night in the holding, and she meets her four, I guess you could say, including little baby Baron, which it's nice to see that Sammy Man is taking care of the baby. It seems like that maybe she's the one that is maybe she's the oldest female. I don't know, but
Yeah.
she's the babysitter, I suppose.
Yeah.
And so Omega introduces herself to little Eva, and right away she notices a tell here in seeing that Eva was given the little Tuca doll by Dr. Carr, and she says to Omega that, yeah, Dr. Carr's the only nice one. Now, last time Omega, was with Carr, she had her own little sign, from Carr that she was softening up a little bit when she put the doll, Omega's doll, gave it back to her, even though they're not supposed to have these kinds of things. So Omega is definitely, I think, reading that as a sign that maybe there's some hope that Emery's going to turn around, or maybe that she already has.
Mm-hmm. Or it just exposes Emery a little bit more to Omega, where she realizes, oh, she has sensitivity about these other kids too. She cares for them also. So it's not just me. It paints a bigger picture of Emery in the way she goes about her day-to-day existence. She took care of Omega, and so now she's taking care of this other little kid that she feels sorry for.
Right.
And you can tell that that's a conflict with Emery, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. And then later on, there's a moment where she's talking to I think, who's the other doctor in there? The lady doctor.
You're thinking of Dr. Scalder. Dr. Scalder.
Scalder, yeah. Scully. It's like a mix between Scully and Mulder.
Yeah, they mixed it up. Scalder. Exactly. That's where they got the name. I'm totally 100% sure this is an X-Files Easter egg. Dr. Scalder. Scully and Mulder combined is Scalder.
Now I'll never
no doubt about it,
name.
Swank. You cracked that code. Ain't no doubt about that one.
But yeah, I certainly won't. I won't forget the name again. But there's a moment where Emery is talking to Scalder, and Scalder is sort of scolding Emery, saying, it's not good to have these all talking to each other. We also hear Ava say that they're discouraged from talking to each other. Obviously,
right?
They've got to handle these kids with force powers, with kid gloves, because if they were ever gained awareness of what their power potential could be individually or collectively, it could be real bad for them. And so she's being lectured, and she says letting Omega intermingle with the specimens is unwise. And Carr says, well, these are activities that I've provided. Besides, they're under our watchful eye. And then she reminds her that, that didn't stop Omega from escaping in the past. And she says, I'll run this as I see fit. But Jim, do you think there's any possibility that Emery is thinking, oh, let's just kind of see what happens here? Because I'm kind of good either way, whether the kids find a way to escape, I can at least go, oops, sorry, or if they don't escape, she can continue with her science. I just wonder if she's still kind of playing it down the middle, or if there's a bigger part of her that's trying to put the pieces in place so that maybe they can escape. And then Emery also escapes too, if they escape, because then she doesn't have to necessarily be, working this program. Or
I
who knows?
sure
Maybe
would.
yeah.
I sure would have liked to have been provided with some insight into her thinking if it is along those lines. I think when she eventually does flip, we're not going to have anything to indicate that this is something she'd been thinking about because they want to surprise the audience, you know.
Sure.
So it's unfortunate we don't have those moments where maybe we get her contemplating, maybe talking to a droid or something about certain things that would indicate to us that she's got something up her sleeve. Because right now it doesn't appear she does. She's by the book to a degree.
Yeah.
Not like Scalder, who's very by the book. I think Scalder is there to provide us with that opposite attitude from what Emery has. Emery is maybe not so by the book, but she still is following things the way they're supposed to be followed and carrying on the way she's supposed to be doing. Do you think when she left that tray sitting there on the bunk next to Omega, making it possible for Omega to steal some of those, they look like, dentist tools, and she was able to pluck that one scalpel. I don't see the tool. Oh, I guess
there's a couple of them here. These little little pointy ones, and then
right.
we see her later, kind of pushing through to kind of pry those panels off. This I got to tell you, Jim, this prison cell is built about as well as the cell that was holding James Bond and Dr. No, where it was just a little. You remember he busted through the grate up on top. He had to hit it with a slipper first, but once he did that, that was one thing that gave me pause. I'm like, really? Like with a metal toothpick, she's just breaking through the panels. But the Empire is, if nothing else, they're arrogant, right? They're arrogant and cheap. So
right, they need to buy a better caulk. That's
careful. I was gonna
CAULK, Swank.
All right,
I knew your mind was going to go into the gutter.
Jeff Holland says, boy, those tools look like something that Dr. Pimple Popper uses. Yeah, maybe she's in there checking the kid's skin, No pimples on these high M counts. But, yeah, so what's amazing is what was revealed behind those panels is basically almost like it looked like maybe an elevator shaft, a lift shaft of some sort. That's what it looked like to me. But so
I think it was the system, like whatever they use to transport those vials of blood.
Oh, okay, yeah,
because was looking in there,
they did a close up
kind of see the
that,
tubing and all of that. Yeah.
It's like when you used to go to the bank. I don't know if banks still do this. It's been so long. I do everything through the ATM, but it was fun as a kid. You'd go to the bank and they would send the money through those tubes, the vacuum tubes. And if you were real lucky and real cute, they might send you a sucker when they sent the last tube out. If you were with mom. Remember back in the day? I used to get suckers from the banker.
Yeah. There's still some banks around me that still use those things, actually. So
the tubes,
and they never give me any suckers or candy or nothing.
Not now.
Nothing.
Hey, speaking of tubes, real quick, I did not get a shot of this, but it was kind of fun, and I feel like maybe we haven't seen this since A New Hope. But the big vacuum tube that sucks up the droids on the Sandcrawler.
We saw it a couple of weeks ago.
We saw it a couple weeks ago? Did we?
Okay. Yeah, on this show.
On Tantiss?
And then it came back. Yeah, on Bad Batch.
On Bad Batch. Okay, all right, okay.
They showed an astromech getting sucked into one of those vacuum tubes. And then it returns in this episode, and we learn that they're not just for astromechs, as it sucked up a mouse droid.
Yeah, I don't know if that was an accident. The mouse droid didn't sound too excited about it as he went flying up in the tube.
Yeah, I don't think it was an accident because it lowered down to the mouse droid.
That's right.
It sucked it up. And I was so surprised that they spent time showing us that tube.
Uh-huh.
And then it didn't play into the story at all. So I predict that the vacuum tube will provide some function to the Bad Batch in these final 2 episodes.
Oh, because they have, right. They've sort of focused on it a couple of times, so maybe there's something
What's
to
the
it.
point? I mean, we get it, but it seemed like it was a real, like, lingering kind of thing. Why did we need to have that in our visual memory? I think there's a purpose for that as far as the I guess foreshadowing goes for
Yeah.
the future of this story.
Yeah, a device here. So the Batch find themselves at the hands of Fee, getting dropped off on this planet. I believe it's Borovo, and a planet that a place that we've seen before. This is one of their, I think, I don't know, like a safe house, for lack of a better word, where they can still rendezvous, and they rendezvous with Echo and their new ride. The Marauder is no more, and we meet the Batch's new ride. I don't really, when it comes to armor, I've said to everybody, when it comes to armor and it comes to vehicles, unless it's the Falcon and a land speeder, that's about as far as I go. Maybe a TIE fighter and an X-Wing, but once you get, especially Clone Wars era stuff, I don't know, one tank from I don't know. So I don't know if there's if this is something we've seen before, this particular class of shuttle, or if it's just a derivative of others, but it's
we saw
cool
it. The Clone Commandos showed up in a ship like this. It's an RHO class shuttle, Alpha 44. Swing.
Oh, okay.
Duh.
Oh, gee.
But
we
see the Clone Commandos arrive in those it was like 3 episodes ago. In that episode with the CX trooper. And,
right. Clone X guy, yeah.
And it's kind of similar to the shuttle that we see in A New Hope in the special edition. It's in the background on Tatooine when the Dewback hunt is happening while they're looking for the droids. You see it lifting off. However, this one seems a little boxier. This seems very boxy, the cargo area underneath, because otherwise it looks like your typical Imperial shuttle.
Right.
It has
it's got the same shape,
boxy,
and the big fin and the 2 side fins. But so obviously this is a troop transport of some sort. That's hence the big box at the bottom.
The RHO class shuttle Alpha 44.
All right. Well, that's courtesy.
New from Hyundai.
Courtesy of Echo. It's about all he could find on such short notice. But nonetheless, Echo is there to help find and rescue Omega. But it's not going to be that easy. And Jim, we did a lot of speculating last week about how Hemlock is able to keep the coordinates of Tantiss a secret. How does that work? And I think it sort of ends up being sort of a combination of some of the things we speculated about, but it turns out that there is a space station that is docked in orbit around Coruscant, Station 003. That's that one we were kind of joking that looked kind of like something out of Star Trek. And so the way you get to Tantiss is you dock there, and then the coordinates are uploaded directly into the Navicomputer, so the pilot has apparently no idea what it is, and it goes on autopilot. You take the jump, and you're there. So pretty slick, and like I say, probably close to what we were speculating last week. But
it's solid security, that's for sure. Any ship. First of all, any ship going there must dock at this station to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
So that would expose anyone who's trying to, steal the codes or whatever. And then the codes change every day.
Yeah.
So there's always new codes. So you can't go into your Navicomputer and pull up the codes and use them again. You can't recycle them. They got that figured out. And off you go. You just kick back and enjoy the ride. You don't have to stress about anything. The thing is, though, is I heard some great speculation this week about Tantiss and why it's impossible to get the coordinates. And someone, and I thought it was kind of clever and kind of insane at the same time, suggested that Tantiss actually moves, the Mount Tantiss moves on the surface of Wayland. So it's never in the same place. It's never
that
in
is-
the but
that
I
is
mean a
clever.
mountain. It's clever. It's clever, but it's tough to find, maneuverability for a mountain.
Right. Well,
Yeah,
with a little
so-
bit of faith, you too can move mountains one day. But
Yeah, move
maybe
the
not
mountain.
on
That's
not on Wayland. But so their mission seems to be somewhat clear. They do steal an Imperial code. And Jim, you're right. You brought up that they change daily. So when you see Return of the Jedi and Piet says to Vader, "That's an older code, sir, but it checks out." That could only be it could be from yesterday or maybe 2 days ago. So when they're talking about having these codes stolen in Jedi, I thought, this could be years old or months old or something like that. I just wasn't thinking that they changed the codes, can you imagine changing your passwords every day? It's hard enough when I've had the same password for 10 years on something. I don't remember it.
Yeah, right. Vader should have choked out Piet when he said, "It's an older code, but I was going to let him through." You're going to do what? But Vader got distracted because he realized Luke was on board the shuttle.
Right.
He's like, "No, let him through. I'll deal with him myself."
Yeah.
And right there, that would have been a red flag to Piet that he screwed up. Oh, deal with them yourself. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Maybe I should have let him through. But, self-preservation sometimes is really hard for an Imperial officer. It's a slippery slope.
Let's talk about these Imperial. Well, let's the mission of the batch here, and then we'll talk a little bit about Rampart. But so the mission is pretty straightforward. They've got the code that will allow them to dock there at Station 003, and then the idea is they'll connect to a terminal because there's always a terminal, right? They got
Yes.
Echo. Echo's going to connect to the terminal, and he's going to download the coordinates to Tantiss because they have to be in the computer system somehow. Only they find out they can't break through the encryption. Well, now what are they going to do? Well, of course, you're going to stow away in a ship. But they don't just do that. I thought they were all going to stow away in a ship that was cleared to go to Tantiss. One of them stows away, Echo does, so that he can drop the shields so that this is a pretty crazy plan. Even Rampart is like, well, we're all going to die. And so they're going to then dock there's no pithy name for it yet. Maybe they'll have a name for the ship, but the batch's new ride to the ship that's going to Tantiss, and they'll take the jump and they'll be connected. And I got to say, I thought that was probably my favorite moment of the episode. Was they built up a lot of tension there as Echo was working on it. And it reminded me a bit of, when Lando is trying to get the rebels during the raid on the second Death Star, just give Han a little more time. He's going to get those shields down. And but I don't know if I interpreted the scene right, but I don't think we ever hear Echo confirm to Hunter that he's dropped the shields. Hunter just has so much faith that he's like, screw it. And he puts the pedal to the metal and boom. And he clamps on just as they take off. I thought that was really, really well played. I liked it a lot.
What does he have to lose? It seems like this is a do or die mission. So,
right.
If they waited any longer, they would have watched the ship blast into hyperspace and they just be there.
Just like Crosshair watched that ship take Omega off the Tantiss when he missed the shot.
You could almost hear Wrecker saying, "Uh-oh, is Echo still on board that thing?" He's like, "Yeah, he's still on board." There he goes. But no, they were able to, right down to the very last second when they attached that magnetic landing gear to the bottom of the ship. It's like you see the sparks as it makes the connection right as it takes off. They didn't have another second to spare.
No,
but it's Wrecker saying to himself, Echo will get this done. I know he'll get this done. Confidence in Echo. But it's also like, hey, if we're not connected to that ship when it jumps into hyperspace, we're dead anyway.
Yeah, because it was just going to be a matter of time. Yeah, they were going to be discovered. They were already. It was already there was a target on their back. There was I thought the idea of them having to scrub their armor was interesting, and maybe I'm reading something into it, but it almost felt like this was them sort of crossing a major precipice. They were stripping their armor of all the identifiable marks that it would have had, almost like a hitman clips all of the labels out of his clothes because he doesn't want to be identified. And it just kind of hit me that maybe that's what it is. They're hoping that, things go bad, they're not going to be easily identified by maybe by their armor or something. Just felt like it could be something symbolic there. I know there was a real practical reason, but I just wondered if there was something maybe symbolic in there too, especially when Hunter was sort of looking at his stripped bare helmet there at one point.
Yeah, I mean, it really is their identity when they're wearing that armor.
Yeah.
It's something that makes them stand out. Now, they all have unique armor, though. So, and for all the work they did removing the paint from the helmet and the gear, the first thing that hangar bay officer says to him is like, "What? Your armor is not regulation." I mean, the very first thing he says to him. So, like, what difference would it have made if they were brightly colored? I guess they just don't want to stand out in a crowd,
Right?
And say, "Hey, look at me!" We're wearing like the Hawaiian shirt equivalent of clone trooper gear. With all the colors and the flamboyancy or whatever.
Yeah.
But
what division are you with? These uniforms are not regulation.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right away. It's like, so what difference did it make? But again, it's not like they're walking in there wearing a neon billboard that's all lit up and everything. So, and it's easier than for Rampart to sell it. These guys, these are classified troopers. My mission is classified. Step aside. So,
or call that guy Governor Tarkin if you want to push the issue.
Oh yeah, he tells him to. So you see that Tarkin has established at this point now, very early in the Empire. This is like 2 years into the Empire. Tarkin has already established a reputation as somebody you do not want to cross.
Yeah.
And you do not want to be spending unnecessary time explaining yourself to Tarkin.
Can you imagine?
Fear of the repercussions.
I don't think
So
he
he's
likes
already
to listen
established.
to a lot of exposition and explanation.
Indeed. Yeah. I don't think Tarkin wants to suffer through any of that stuff.
No.
And I think the officers underneath him all recognize that, even this early in his career.
There was a couple of kind of humorous moments, I thought, when Rampart was talking to the batch and about how, what was his line? Oh, he was upset that he had to wear a captain's uniform because he was a vice admiral, And
yeah, right.
There's a shot of here. I think I got it right here. All the batch, they just look at him. Like, I love this. I just like this shot of Wrecker. They're just all giving him this like blank stare. Yeah. These guys are. I was trying to come up with formulate in my head. And I know that they're stylized. There's no question the animation is still very stylized. Not as much as it was at the beginning of the Clone Wars, but it's still not, they're not going for necessarily a photoreal version of a human being. But damn if they're not lifelike to me. I really got to give, obviously, D. Bradley Baker, this whole thing is worthy, in my opinion, of an Emmy Award of some sort, to play all these characters the way he does and create such unique personalities. And but I really, they feel very fleshed out to me, and I do, when I think of them in my head, I do think of them as real characters in the Star Wars universe. I don't think, oh, that's the cartoons. Whereas I'll be honest with you, when it comes to some of the Rebels characters like Zeb, I know we've seen him in live action. I know we've seen Ezra and Sabine, but when I think Kanan, I think Sabine, and I think Hera, the first thing that comes to my mind is cartoon. And when I think about the Bad Batch, kind of the way I think about Clone Wars era Anakin and Obi-Wan, I just think of one solidified character. I don't necessarily think of, the cartoon show. Could be just a difference in the style of animation, or Not sure exactly what that is, but the batch feel very fleshed out to me.
Yeah, I mean that's great to hear you say that, because when the Clone Wars, and this is in the similar vein as Clone Wars style animation, and when these characters, well, the Clone Wars was first introduced, the biggest complaint from a lot of fans was that they looked too much like wooden puppets.
Yeah.
They didn't come off as living, breathing characters, and so naturally, Lucas Animation, they worked on that, and they really evolved the way these character models look and walk. And I used to complain about the hair not moving, because
Yeah.
that just added to the wooden puppet sort of vibe people were getting. And with Star Wars being faster, more intense, you want to see the characters display physically faster, more intense environments, and the effect they have on them. You want to see the wind blowing through their hair. If they're riding a speeder bike, you want to see their clothes fly in the wind and all that stuff. And I've always felt that the Rebels style was a little more traditionally animated compared to the Clone Wars and now the Bad Batch. This type of animation to me is always sort of on a level of its own.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
I think very few animated productions have been able to even come close to it. So it's not like I'm some expert on all things animation or anything, but
Yeah, but it's
I've
a gut
seen my
feeling that you have as a viewer, whether you establish a connection with the characters or not. And there's something about these guys and the way this thing is done that I feel like they're real characters.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and the action figures for these characters stand on shelves right next to the action figures from characters from live action. So, and I
Yeah.
don't separate them or anything.
Right. Right. Here's one.
Uh,
Caption this. What do we think Wrecker is watching? This is he on the TikTok?
What?
Is he
Yeah,
scrolling
no,
the grams?
yeah,
This is
yeah,
Wrecker
he's scrolling.
sitting there. Yeah, it looks like he's on a phone.
Yeah, he's scrolling through videos and stuff, and
Is he watching RFR after shows?
gets a clip of RFR. Then the next one is like a fail, like some guy on a motorcycle wiping out.
Try not to laugh.
And then the next one, it's like, too bad there's not a place for bad driver karma to be exposed on the internet. And then you see some guy hanging out the side of his car yelling at someone. And Wrecker's just like, oh, that's a good one. Yeah. He's just having a good old time there, killing time just like we do, staring at his phone and scrolling through videos.
Right. And there's something about him that always kind of reminds me of a little bit of Curly from the Three Stooges. Like Moe and Larry have gone off to do something, and Curly's there to like just keep tabs on things, and he just finds a way to screw it up. So as soon as that guy shows up to question him, he has my favorite line of the episode. He goes, "Where's your captain?" Captaining.
Yeah, right. He's out captaining.
You thought it was
that's a good Wrecker moment,
Yeah.
He gives us these good moments, despite the fact we haven't really delved into his character much at all in this season.
Not much.
And he's
no.
never really taken the forefront in any of these missions. He's always left behind on Pabu or on the ship. I don't know why they wouldn't want to incorporate his muscle into some of these missions they're going on.
Yeah. No, it's he's the comic relief, but yeah, certainly not as fleshed out as the others. But who knows what's in his past that's kind of made him. I mean, as far as the IQ, I'm sure it's a little lower than the other ones. I mean, no, that's probably not appropriate to say these days, but I mean, I'm just judging based on, I think he's got the street smarts. I'll give him the street smarts, but I don't think that he was valedictorian of his graduating clone class.
Right. Yeah. When you were in the academy, you didn't want to cheat off of his paper. You knew this.
Right. You'd get an F and he would, break you over his leg, for doing it. So the seeds of escape are planted once Omega is able to break that panel out, and then she tells the other three that she has escaped before, and that's when you start to see them, at first when she talks about, when she's talking to them, they're very shut down and they don't want to really engage too much. But boy, when they find out that she has escaped before, then it's like, okay, maybe there is hope for this. But I mean, Omega, she springs into action right away. She's not going to sit there for very long. She does acknowledge that when she escaped, she had some help. She did have Crosshair. But there were times during that whole her escape that she gave Crosshair the option to walk. Hey, if you're not into this, if you're not wanting to do this, I'll do it alone. I'll do it by myself.
It just made me think of something when you said Omega revealed that she escaped, but she did have help.
Mhm.
Crosshair, of course.
Right. Yeah.
But we're forgetting about Batcher. He also played a role in
Batcher
her
did,
escape as
yes.
well.
Right.
And where was Batcher this episode? He wasn't anywhere to be found. Where did
what?
they drop him off somewhere?
I think he stayed with Fee. Because Fee picks
Fee.
them all up, right? After the height, what is it, on the side of the mountain? She picks them all up.
Okay.
So maybe Batcher is with her, or maybe they left Batcher on Pabu with the mayor's daughter.
That could be. It just occurred to me right now.
No, it's a good thought. Where's Batcher?
Where's Batcher? Well, I hope Fee has the appropriate kibble for the type of hound that he is.
Right. I'm sure a small toddler would work if she runs out of kibble. I mean, Batcher's...
Then he should have come with them on this mission. He could have eaten all these children,
or at least Baron.
Yeah.
But there was something too, though, that I thought was pretty cool. A little homage to the not just the OT, but to A New Hope. This room that they were in looks just like the communications room, or whatever that room was. I don't know what type of room it was in A New Hope, when there's that great scene with Han and he's talking over the radio. We're all fine here now. How are you? That whole bit. They're trying to find which
really?
cell
I felt
block
this
Leia
looked
is
more
in.
like the control room on the Death Star, where 3PO and R2 were hiding out in, that control room that overlooked the hangar and all that.
Right, and he goes and
That's
picks
what
up
I
his
thought it
comm
was
link,
more like.
and yeah.
Yeah. It's got the red paneling on the walls there that always kind of sets it off. It makes me think of A New Hope.
But it's very
standard
Death Star.
Imperial design.
Yeah, but definitely very Death Star to me. So maybe Tantiss is at the sort of the forefront of technology for its time, which might be why it sort of has that sort of Death Star look. They're sparing no expense on Project Necromancer. They're sparing no expense on, what is it? Is it Project the Death Star? Stardust?
Stardust, yes.
Yeah. So those are the two big secret or special ops that are going on. But yeah, it's nice to see those little touches. Let's see. We got some super chats here. Let's check in with. Here's Calvin McPherson. Calvin says, why does Emery have a surname that isn't Fett? And did she go to med school? I'm guessing she went to clone med school. Did she have an eccentric mentor named Carr? Did an old woman in the desert ask her for her name and she said it was Carr? Okay, referencing Ray. So where did Emery get her name? So, I mean, I guess Boba got his name from Jango Fett. Thinking about these clones that have regular names, Omega still seems to have, that's her code name, I guess. I mean, she was the Omega. She was the last unaltered clone. So that explains her name. I don't know where Emery Carr being a clone, why does she have sort of a, for lack of a better expression, a Christian name, a first and last name?
Well, I mean, Fett, she wouldn't have the name Fett. I mean, the only reason Boba had the name was because he was Jango's son,
It was adopted.
Yeah. So, and I'm sure Django gave him the name Boba as well.
Yeah.
I don't think that the Kaminoans had anything to do with the naming. And the Kaminoans always looked at them as code names. The clones themselves gave them, they chose their own names.
Right.
Or
they
had nicknames that stuck.
Right. Yeah.
So I assume something similar with Emery Carr. I mean, obviously she had to go somewhere to be educated in all of the scientific stuff. So, you need to, you can't call yourself a code name when you're enrolling into the university. You have to come up with something. And
now is Emery an unaltered clone? Does she have the age acceleration that the others do? As far as we know, Omega and Boba are the only two that were unaltered.
She'd have to have the accelerated aging because she'd only be a teenager at this point in the timeline.
Oh, right. Yeah, right. She would.
This is only a couple of years after Revenge of the Sith.
Right.
And by Revenge of the Sith, the clone army was, maybe 13, 14 years old at that point.
Which,
so
and they age at I think it's 4 times.
Right.
So the oldest clones could be in their late 40s, early 50s, even by the end of the Clone War. Potentially.
Well, maybe not that old, right? Because
I think
if the clone army was
say 13 years old.
Well, the clone army began being built at some point between the Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, and that's a 10-year period.
Right.
So let's just say it happens at the very end of the Phantom Menace. Take full advantage of the 10 years. So by the time we first see the clones in Attack of the Clones, they're 20 years old. They're appearing to be 20 years old because of the double aging.
But it's only been 10. Okay, so the aging could be twice. It's twice.
Right. So I think at the very best in this period of time, the oldest clone would be 30 tops.
Okay.
15 years old in real time.
Okay.
Yeah.
A little younger than I thought. For say somebody,
now I've always
Rex.
worked on the notion that the advanced aging happened in double time. But if you can make a clone age in double the amount of time, could you also make a clone, age at a quicker rate? I'm not really sure how that all works.
Yeah, no, I don't know either. And I know there's also this theory, we hear it a lot about, it's accelerated aging and then it levels off and then they age at a normal pace. But that's something that I've never seen in any kind of official source that I know of.
Right. I heard somebody once say, yeah, Filoni once said that. But I mean, it just doesn't add up.
I need to hear the quote. I want to see it. Not that we don't believe you, dear listeners. We definitely believe you. Getting back here to our super chats. Here's N64 Rescue says, was wondering if y'all could guess the runtime for the final episode. Next week is supposed to be 22 minutes. Well, Mac already kind of put his guess out there. Jim, you gonna go on record and saying that you think it's going to follow suit with the rest of what we've seen so far in a 22, 24-minute episode?
Right. That's what I think. At the very most, between the two episodes together, I think we have 45 to 50 more minutes of content ahead of us. Seems like we need a lot more, though. So maybe they might surprise us with a double episode for the finale. But I don't know. Again, like I said, I think that they look at this content as these shows as potentially a future source for programming on cable TV. And in that case, you'd want to be cutting in all the commercials and everything to get to a half hour.
Right.
So
And that's the
20
great
minutes, 22 minutes. Yeah.
that's the nice thing about these shows is that they kind of are evergreen. They kind of always just stand for what they are. They they're always going to be relevant to people who are discovering Star Wars and want to go in and like we said about, I think it was Andor we were talking about specifically, and there were some people that were like, it's not really my cup of tea or what have you. And I said, what's the great thing about it is that it's always going to be there. When you get to a certain place like Clone Wars, these series I think have a long shelf life in terms of people discovering them for the first time because they've grown, perhaps in their fandom, or they become curious in a particular era of Star Wars storytelling. So Bad Batch is the same. I think be great that it's always there whenever you get around to it. And Bad
Look
Batch,
how Clone Wars surged in popularity once it was accessible on Netflix.
Right.
I think a lot of Star Wars fans let Clone Wars fly under the radar for years. And then the show landed on Netflix and people could binge it. And they did. It had big numbers on Netflix.
Yeah. Hey, folks, I got to point out here. Look at how bored Tyler looks. Come on. Let's ring us up here. Look at him. He was sucking on his pen, just watching his beard grow. We're just watching the beard grow. 708-866-1737. The chat is very active. So you know what? Instead of being so active in the chat, give us a call. 708-866-1737. Make Tyler earn his pay. Tyler, make a sad
I would love
face.
to hear some speculation from listeners about how this show is going to wrap up.
Right.
I'd like to start hearing what you guys think as far as that. How is the Bad Batch going to wrap up? Let's hear your final episode predictions. Give us a call, 708-866-1737.
Yeah. All right, Tyler. We put the call. Like Tyler's. Yeah, there you go. There you go.
It's over here now.
All right, we'll let you get to it, Tyler. Okay, we got, here's Chris. Chris says, thanks for another mighty fine after show season heading down the home stretch. I predict more discussions. Thanks for all you do. And RFR for life. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate that very much. Very kind with the super chat. Here's our buddy Eric from Phoenix. Great use of humor in this episode. Rampart, he's here all week, folks. Don't forget to tip the wait staff. Can't stick around. Have fun. All right. I thought you said he was only. Oh, he's busy on Wednesdays. He's got the Wednesday engagement. All right. Well, I don't think we're doing another.
That's why
Thursday
he can't stick
show.
around.
That's why he can't stick around. Yeah, Rampart was definitely funny. There's one moment where they remind him as they're walking in there, because I was thinking like, could Rampart parlay this into like a pardon or something like that if he's the one that blows the whistle on the Bad Batch? Not saying that the Empire wouldn't screw him again, perhaps, but I thought, well, is that going through his head? And as they're coming in, Hunter reminds him, he's like, remember, the Empire framed you and put you in prison. We're the ones that broke you out if you're going to think about betraying us. So I think that was maybe what we needed as the viewer to kind of put our mind at ease that, he's in there. He's like, I'm here, aren't I? I'm still doing this. Because he doesn't have anything to gain. The Empire sold him up the river.
Well, that's a great prediction that Rampart will blow the whistle on the Bad Batch at some point in these last two episodes.
Oh, you think that's
very
a possibility?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
I think that's a strong possibility.
I feel like it was
achieve exactly what you're talking about. Get a pardon.
Yeah. Huh. And he could maybe live to fight another day. He does have a line where he talks about we're all going to die. And there was some speculation I saw in the chat saying, is that foreshadowing that, no one is going to survive this? But I really feel that Omega has to, because they have to sacrifice to keep Omega safe. And, and what is Omega's future to be without at least a couple of the Bad Batch. Can you imagine if she just ends up with Crosshair? If he's the only one that survives, she's like, oh, that's the one I get? Or
Well,
Wrecker?
Asajj Ventress is out there. We were
No,
introduced to
Asajj.
her,
Right.
and her appearance, her resurrection. They featured her in the trailer and everything, but her appearance really didn't have much impact on the story on a whole. It had some impact on Omega when she, was putting her through the tests and stuff, because we have been questioning since the very start of this show about Omega's force sensitivity. Does she have it? Doesn't she have it? Who knows? It was kind of nice to have that situation with Asajj where she can tell us that Omega is not force sensitive. I know there was some skepticism from the Bad Batch, the characters, but I tend to take what Asajj says on face value. Now, should she come back, maybe it would be because Omega is force sensitive and Asajj wants to train Omega, because remember, Asajj, she's a force sensitive, and she had been trained in the Jedi arts, and she was a youngling at the Jedi Temple. So it's possible she might want to take Omega under her wing. Maybe there's something there, and that will set up the next series.
Yeah.
Omega and Ventress, Omega and Asajj.
Yeah.
Because they only name these shows after the characters now. They don't give us clever names for these shows anymore. It's just the name of the character.
Mandalorian. And Grogu.
Yeah. Obi-Wan Kenobi. Andor. The Bad Batch. Then the next show will be Omega and Asajj. Either it'll be a show about them training her in the ways of the Force, or they're going to hit the road and they're going to be the next big pop duo in the galaxy, and they're going to make a bunch of great videos.
The next show I'm hoping for is Overheated Gamorreans. That's the show that I want.
But what's the Overheated Gamorrean's name? It's like Piggy. And then Mr. Piggy. And then you can make it a Muppets crossover and bring Miss Piggy in. And it could be a romantic tale.
We saw, I think there's a photo of Miss Piggy on the set of The Empire Strikes Back with Yoda. I think Frank Oz is doing both. And I was like, I'd rather see Miss Piggy hanging out with one of the Gamorrean guards in the Jabba's palace. I think that would be real. That'd be a real trip. Rich Brendel kicking in. It says, forget about Kitster. Where's Cody? A lot of people want to know, where is Cody?
Yeah, he just
where
disappeared,
is he?
didn't he?
He did.
Also,
Turtle
Rex is out there, and there are others.
Turtle Wars says the description of Bad Batch Season 3 on Disney Plus promises an epic conclusion to Clone Force 99's battle to survive the Empire, with possibly 50 minutes or less of story left. Will we really get an actual conclusion to it all? Oh, I think we'll get a conclusion. I definitely think we'll get a conclusion. I hope they don't wimp out on that. It needs to be definitive, unless they're going to come back in some form. I don't know. We'll see. It's going to be interesting. I'm trying to think of the last, we knew when Rebels was going to end. Rebels had a final season that was promoted to be a final season. Clone Wars eventually did. But as far as the Mandalorian is still out there, and Ahsoka, and we are pretty certain that Kenobi's not going to have a second season, given the Blu-ray release, calling it the complete series. But Ewan McGregor is still out there talking about it when he goes on talk shows, saying he would like to do it, and fans seem to be wanting it. So I'm just trying to think about precedent of wrapping up a series and giving us a really satisfying ending. I would say Rebels probably did it the best with that big epilogue that they had. That was pretty epic. So I think they stuck the landing with that finale. I'll give them that. I would like to have seen Clone Wars I guess it was all right. It was, they got it together. I just think that it's a shame that they never had. I don't know. I still feel that there was lost opportunity with Clone Wars. There was a lot of really cool stories that they were planning to tell. They were going to tell, and it didn't necessarily feel like a big finale to me. That last episode. In fact, I'm hard pressed to even remember it. I remember Rebels finale really well, but I don't remember the Clone Wars, what we would consider the finale, that well. So I hope Bad Batch gives us something that we remember. We go, oh, that finale was great.
Well, the finale for the Clone Wars to give us an epilogue as well, with Darth Vader visiting the crash site of this Star Destroyer and discovering Ahsoka's lightsabers there and all that. So that was pretty much a solid ending, showing us that the Clone Wars had ended and we were firmly in the era of the Empire. And of course, with Ahsoka, on the lam, and and Captain Rex as well, for that matter. But yeah, I would like to see, a real solid ending to this with the death of potentially all the Bad Batch. What kind of future? What kind of future do they have? Omega aside.
Okay.
What kind of future does the Bad Batch have? I'm surprised they've survived this late into the season. Most of them,
Well, right. We lost Tech.
They didn't bring back Tech. And, the jury's still out on that, whether or not it's going to happen.
There was no name check for Tech this week, by the way, that I caught. Tech was not name dropped.
That still doesn't mean he's not coming back. I would prefer him to stay dead, because to bring him back this late in the season there's no time to unpack anything.
Right.
With Tech, there's no time to unpack. It would have been much more effective if he came back toward the beginning of the season. But I don't know. I think Wrecker is an easy one to kill off. I think Hunter is an easy one to kill. They're all easy to kill off. Will the show have the guts to do it?
Yeah, good question.
And look at Rogue One. They always say, "Oh, it sucks to see your heroes die," but in the case of this, where we understand the timeline of events here in the Star Wars universe, and we also know it's going to be really hard to squeeze in any of these characters in future storytelling, unless, of course, they become bounty hunters or something like that.
Yeah, that is, I think that's why the end of the Clone Wars series, which was great, that last arc, don't get me wrong, I got people in the chat saying, well, it was Order 66 and Rex and Ahsoka. No, it was a great arc, don't get me wrong, but I just didn't think that the finale, I think it would be hard to make that finale feel like a finale, because it goes right into events and situations that we know. So that makes it harder. I think with Bad Batch, because it's not dealing with all these familiar characters that we see later in content, I think they have the opportunity, like with Rogue One, to do something of a similar nature. And I think we've got a caller here that wants to talk and make that exact connection. We got Matt Patreon from LA calling in. Hey, Matt.
Hey, fellas, chut. Give us talk some Bad Batch again.
Yes, sir.
Hey, yeah, so, I'm glad you're talking about conclusions here, because I can't help but feel like there's going to be a lot to wrap up, like you guys said. Just got off work, so I didn't catch the first hour, so I'm sorry if I repeat myself a little bit. But I was looking at the episode count after I finished last night's episode, and I noticed that there was a 15 episode count for this season versus the 16 we've got for the last two. And I was wondering, I really hope that this last episode 15, is similar to how we got episode 1 in the series, where it was a little bit longer, because I do feel like we might get cheated out of a little more exposition and just wrapping up this storyline. But here's what I want from the conclusion, if I can just move forward with this. I would like to see, obviously, we got a big heist coming up. I can't help but feel like the Bad Batch is the perfect squad to infiltrate the Imperial's most secure facility, possibly, in the galaxy. If anybody's going to do a suicide-style mission into this place, it's going to be them. And I'm, right there with Jimmy Mack. Is this going to be a Rogue One style, cards on the table, chips in in kind of style, or is it going to be, we all go away happy? Doubtful, but we'll see. And beyond that, I think for this to feel like a finale, I feel like the Bad Batch, and with all the thematic things we've been talking about, the clones behind the scenes, I need some sort of peace for the clones in general. Obviously we've speculated about a clone rebellion many times, and that's been building behind the scenes. I don't know if we're going to really get a wrap up to
Matt, you
the
bring
clone rebellion struggle.
Matt, that's a great point, that this series doesn't just seem to have an obligation to give us a satisfying end to the Bad Batch, but you're right. This is the furthest that we've seen in terms of the story of these clones. That's really also a big part of this, is what happens to the clones. We know we got Chuchi out there working on a pension plan for the clones, so maybe some of them will be able to retire down to Del Boca Vista. But what does happen to all the clones, and then this era is really ripe for storytelling, because we're seeing the rise of the conscripted troops. We're seeing the Macquarie troopers. And so, yeah, there's more to it than just the Bad Batch as far as potential wrap-ups, I guess.
Yeah, and it makes you ask yourself, what is the purpose of this series in the first place? What is the purpose of it? It seems like the overarching purpose of this series is to show us how clone troopers get phased out completely, and the Imperial Stormtrooper is the next wave of justice in the galaxy. And that's an important thing for this show to stick to the landing as far as that goes. The destruction of Camino was such a big step in that direction.
Yeah.
And then to learn that clones are just like disappearing and things like that throughout season 2. Season 1, destruction of Camino. Take care of the cloning facilities. Put an end to that. Then season 2, a lot of clones, you got to clean up some of the leftover clone troopers, because they're causing issues. They're not part of the program anymore. But in this season, season 3, we don't really get a sense of that very much. We see clone troopers still actively serving the Empire, the clone commandos specifically. We see them still very much in action, very much part of the Imperial fabric. That, to me, is taking a detour now, if we're forgetting about what the purpose of this series is all about. And the purpose is about the phasing out of the clone troopers. So I think we need to have a more definitive ending, like you were saying, Swank, where you want to have that solid moment where you close the book and put it on the shelf.
Yeah.
And that's what this show needs to do as far as its place within the overall mythology of Star Wars.
Now, Adam in the chat has an interesting thought, speculation. He says, and Matt, you can chime in here if you want, but Adam says, I have a feeling that we're going to be left not knowing if they're alive or not. It'll keep it open for whether they want to use them for cameos in a later series or not. For me, this would be, I think, worst case scenario. I don't want a half-pregnant mamby-pamby conclusion. I think Adam's right to speculate that, because I think that's a very real possibility. But I hope they don't go that route.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I want to see, like I said, I want to see this show live up to and complete its purpose for existing. And it's not just to introduce us to these wacky clone troopers and their kid. There's
Right.
more to it when you think about the overall Star Wars mythology and the real purpose of this
Do
series.
you guys think that we could? Oh, sorry.
No,
No,
ahead,
go for it, Matt.
I was just going to repeat myself anyway.
Well, I was just going to ask, just kind of piggybacking off what you said, do you think there is room for a future Tales of the Rebellion where one of these tales includes this clone rebellion?
Yeah, I guess.
That's
But
just
what
a
is
little
it going
thought
to be?
that popped up in my brain as we're going to.
But like in the Tales of anthology series, those episodes, they all vary. They don't really build a story. They're all just individual stories of an anthology. So we're talking about what, a 12-minute episode to address something of this magnitude?
Yeah. Again, not impossible, not out of the realm of what they might try, but it certainly wouldn't be my choice
Right.
for that. I think that the Tales of is really great for just these little snippets, these little, and I don't mean this filler in a bad way, but I mean these little layers of backstory for characters that they can tell in these little 12-minute vignettes or mini episodes or whatever. I would hate to see them try to tackle something that big with that format. But I would love to see it really be a real anthology series and do multiple episodes over the course of, like the Bad Batch over a course of several months and just really take the time.
Yeah, I would definitely get into that. We were hoping for this kind of storyline deep into the Bad Batch here, but I think you guys feel it. I feel it. I don't know if we're going to get to it. But yeah. I kind of doubt they're just going to leave these threads hanging. They set it up so much. They spent up so much time with Chuchi and the Senate and Rex and Echo. There's a reason why Echo had to leave, right? It's because he had a greater purpose. And if that purpose gets left hanging, I'll be honest, I'll be a little less lackluster with the Bad Batch at the end here.
Yeah, I don't want to go out that way. Yeah, I don't want it to go out that way, Matt, because I've had such a great ride on this last season. It had a lot. It still has a lot of promise, but as we get into the last two, they got a lot. They got a lot of ground to cover. A lot of ground to cover. Hey, man, thanks for the call. Really good stuff. Yeah, 2 episodes left. It's I was kind of. I'm hoping. I think Mac's going to end up being right on this with the runtime. But I hope that's not the case. I hope that we're looking at episode 15 coming in at like twice the amount, like 40 minutes, something like that. That would be great.
That would be.
I'd love it. Here's Sal B. Crum. He weighing in. He says, I'm amazed how much is left to do in these 2 episodes. We're either getting longer to close it out or we're going to be left feeling like this was rushed to a close. Can't wait for Omega's one-way out moment. Yeah, she might have a one-way out moment. That's... they're going to find out that Baron is just a baby and can't swim. It's going to be rough.
He sunk like a stone. I thought all the kids were going to start chanting One Way Out when Omega told them that she was going to bust them all out. They start chanting, One Way Out. One way out. I will say, though, I these kids have some latent force powers but Jax seems to be like, maybe Jax is the oldest one of the group. And he's got a little bit more aggression. And part of me just wants to see those eyes turn red. And he just turns and he just fucking, excuse me. He just opens a can of total whoop ass on these imps, especially somebody like a Hemlock. So force chokes him up against a wall. I would love that.
Imagine what those red eyes and that green skin would look like. It'd be great.
Oh, that would just be so great. Because he's too old to be trained.
Right.
And he does appear to have a little bit more of, an edge to him compared to the other kids. He tried to escape once. And then the baby was throwing vases around with the Force.
Yeah.
When we first get introduced to it. So it's possible, and I would love to see somehow the kids' force powers get incorporated into these final episodes. It would be really great. It
Yeah,
would be really great. But
I agree.
I don't know, just with the pacing of this season, especially the back half of this season, I'm left really surprised. It seems like the show is kind of spinning its wheels a little bit. It
Yeah,
really is. I mean,
despite
it's
the
so
fact that it
focused on Omega in and out of Mount Tantiss and them
yeah.
trying to get into it, trying to find her. It's like it's repeating itself. And that's really unfortunate for this series. It seems like I said before, they took an idea and stretched it about as thin as they
Yeah,
could.
I didn't see it going this way where Omega would get recaptured to end back up. I always knew she was going back to Mount Tantus, but I thought she was going as part of the strike force, the strike team that was going to go in there and rescue these troopers. I just didn't see her going back again as a prisoner. But I always knew that we all knew this was going to end on Tantus.
Yeah, we did. I mean, ever since it was introduced at the end of season 1. But well, was it at the end of season 1 or was it last season when it was introduced? Gosh, I don't
I think it was last season when we ended up seeing what's his name from Rogue One, and we saw some of the other Imperial imps. They were
That was last season.
That was last season. That's where
when Tarkin had the summit.
Tarkin, right? The summit. That's right. The summit.
Yeah. But
Krennic.
yeah,
That's what I was trying to think of. Krennic.
You know, it just seems like in each season they take ideas and just beat it into the ground. Season 1, missions for Sid. Season 2, more missions for Sid. And then season 3, save Omega.
Yeah. I still believe that with just a couple of exceptions, this season has been paced very well. I've really enjoyed it. But it's kind of like, when you were watching the prequel trilogy, and you're like, oh, we got to do all of that in one movie, because, Phantom Menace was good. I mean, I love the movie, but I mean, in terms of telling the story of Anakin Skywalker, I mean, George went way back, and then you had, Attack of the Clones, which gave us a few minutes of the Clone Wars, and then it was like, wait a minute. Now we've got, thinking back at that time, after when the credits were rolling on Attack of the Clones, it's like, okay, wait a minute. The next movie has to be the Clone Wars, the birth of the twins. Anakin and Obi-Wan have to fight on a volcano. All this stuff that needed to happen. Like, that's all going to happen in, one movie. Little did we know at the time we'd have the Clone Wars that would help out quite a bit. But back to the phones we go. We got another Patreon waiting here. This is David from Boston. Hey, David, you're on with Rebel Force Radio. Thanks very much for calling in.
Hey. Yeah, chut, guys. How you doing?
Chut. All right. What do you think of this? We got 2 episodes left. Where are we?
Well, we're leading up to a big showdown of some sort. Escape from Tantiss Mountain.
Is that like Snake Mountain?
I've been. Yeah, exactly. But I've been enjoying this. I never thought we'd see Rampart come back, so I've kind of been enjoying this little arc.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me almost of Cal a little bit.
Yeah.
And then, he's got the beard now, and, it's kind of like the anti-Spock. You had evil Spock had the beard, and good Spock didn't.
Right.
But I'm interested. I'm interested where this is going. If he's going to turn out to be an ally, or if he's going to, he did seem to enjoy being in his Imperial uniform again and power tripping people. But I kind of get this idea he might be important in the end. I think it's cool seeing these kind of smaller characters come back and seeing their journey complete, especially. I mean, he got it bad from Tarkin, so.
Yeah, he did. He did. You know, I'm looking at this picture of him as in his prison uniform, and I'm thinking, yeah, he looks kind of good in orange. Maybe a little flight suit. Put on a little helmet there. He could be flying for the rebellion. Who knows?
What was the one back in the day? Hashtag hot callus. So hashtag hot rampart.
I remember the hot
Please
callus.
don't talk to me about hashtag hot callus. I just felt it was so
That's a
embarrassing.
blast from the past.
Grown women lusting over an animated character from a show. I just felt like, oh God. But whatever. Hey,
I've seen a few pretty cartoons in my day. I mean, not into that weird stuff or anything, but if the ladies want to have a little fun with Callus, we'll let them.
Hot Fred Flintstone, hashtag hot Barney Rubble.
Well, you know, I was always, you know, as a kid growing up, I was like, why do they always talk about who's hotter, Velma or Betty, or Wilma or Betty? And I'm like, they both look the same to me. They just have different colored hair. I could never see a difference between the two of them. Now, you know, Velma and Daphne, that's another story. But all right, David, you didn't call about that. You called about Rampart. I threw out to Mac, I said, you know, one might think that Rampart could use this as an opportunity. He could blow the whistle on the batch and maybe try to use that to gain re-entry into Imperial Command. As you said, he's enjoying getting a taste of this. I was throwing it out there as I don't think that's going to happen because Hunter already threw that at him and kind of pushed that out to the audience. Matt goes, oh, no, I think that might very well be a possibility. What do you think about Rampart? Do you think that he's on the good side forever, or do you think that he's going to turn tail and I don't know. I think he might be on the good side. He's certainly not as evil as Hemlock. Hemlock is he's an evil one. Oh,
but
yeah.
Rampart always seemed like he was just kind of doing his job, you know, towing the Empire line until it came back to bite him. So I think he's going to be legit. I think he's going to help him out.
All right. Well, you know, Matt called the Callus face turn early on in Rebels, and right now it seems like he's calling a heel turn, a return to heel on Rampart. So we'll see. All right, hey David, thanks very
Rampart,
much for the call.
Baby face.
Yeah, baby face.
Yeah, I'll see you guys in Bristol.
All right, buddy. Looking forward to it, man. Thank you so much.
See you there, David.
Yeah, Bristol. We're going to be in Bristol, Connecticut, May 4th, for the big hoopla there in Bristol, Connecticut, downtown. There's going to be a screening of the Empire Strikes Back at the theater down there. We're going to be the opening act. You can get all the details, rebelforceradio.com. You can get tickets, book your hotel, all that information there on the website. Couple more super chats here. John David says, hey, all wanted to call in, but I'm still at work. Let's talk about Spaceship. Digging the utilitarian look all the ships have in the show. Boxy, flat, bulky, much like a real spaceship. By the way, Batchy is a girl and she's on Pabu. Batcher? Batcher? Yeah, Batcher's a girl? I can't remember. All right, Batcher's a girl.
I think they do say, I think we talked about that. Batcher's a female hound.
I do love that John David. The great thing about super chats, folks, is that if you need to correct yourself, you have to send another one. So John just wanted to correct his typo for Batcher, and it cost him $1.99. John, I tell you, that's dedication, man. I think we got the picture. Next time that happens, we'll read between the lines, but definitely appreciate it, buddy. Thank you very much. Here's Tanya says, my first grade math class started lesson 99 today, so I went on a 5-minute rant about the Bad Batch. The blank stares were priceless. Oh, say it ain't so, Tanya. No one in first grade might be a little young for Bad Batch. Might be a little young, but maybe
that's
maybe
hilarious.
They know the tales of the Jedi.
I just picture that. She goes on a rant.
I also love that.
Why not?
Right. She says,
Lord knows in my job, I go on rants about Star Wars all the time. So Say it loud, say it proud, Tanya.
Yeah, absolutely. And you educate those young skulls full of mush all about the wars. I love it. Adam Locke says, I was one of those people that ignored animated shows for a long time, didn't know they were canon. Finally watched Clone Wars after the final season wrapped and got hooked. Now I watch everything. Love Bad Batch. Yeah, Adam, you're not alone. There were a lot of people that kind of dismissed it but rediscovered it. And, as Jimmy's was saying, Netflix did huge things for the Clone Wars, despite the fact they were on Cartoon Network, despite the fact they had like a short run on TNT. I remember they were trying to do that. They were really pushing the cable. But man, when it hit Netflix, boom. And of course, the pandemic also sort of helped with that as well. And people got familiar with it. So yeah, that's a good one. And let's see. Sal B. Crum. Gamorrean's Gone Wild coming this fall. That's right. Yeah, just like that line when he said, like a overheated Gamorreans. Oh man. Well, I think that's it. I think that's gonna wrap things up here. Looking at this episode, we gotta save a little bit of energy for the next two. The big finale coming up.
We have a programming note. Programming note. You guys need to pay close attention to this. Next week, RFR is on spring break. There's going to be no Bad Batch after show. No Bad Batch after show, no weekly show, no nothing. Me and Swank, we're going off the grid. But the Bad Batch after show will return because we need to talk about next week's episode. And we're not going to jam it all into a final double episode or anything like that. We'll be coming at you with the Bad Batch After Show Live for next week's episode on Monday, April 29th. And then we'll be back here on Wednesday, May 1st to talk about the series finale. So you'll be getting 2 episodes of the Bad Batch After Show on the week of April 29th. No Bad Batch next week. I mean, obviously the show will be on the air, but Rebel Force Radio will not. So save your comments for Monday the 29th and join us here at the usual time for the Bad Batch After Show penultimate episode.
I love writing that. I love writing that. And every time we get to the penultimate episode, I gotta put that in the show description. Tyler Page, Tyler, thanks so much, buddy. As always, you're on spring break next week as well. I don't know if Mac told you, but you don't have to be here next week.
I'll still show up.
Yeah, it's the Tyler show. Hey, everybody.
He'll take calls. Right. Tyler will take calls next week. You won't be on the air. It's really hard to get past Tyler to get on the air, but next week it'll be impossible. But you can still call him and talk to him. Tyler, what's your cell number? Give that out.
81. No.
Hey, that's enough.
All right, man. Well, thanks very much for being here. Anything that you noticed in this episode that we might have just glossed over?
Well, a couple little things. I feel like, Echo called Rampart a hydro snake. Did you guys catch that?
That's right.
I did.
That?
Yep.
It was kind of weird. And then the Death Star droid appearance was cool. And
I missed the
I had
Death
fun
Star
with
droid. Where was the Death Star droid?
There was a Death Star droid and an R2 right when they opened the door. That Echo snuck into that hangar bay.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, just kind of waddling around. Nice little eye candy for you. And then, like everyone else, I'm at the point where I'm like, what is the point of this series? And are those kids gonna make it out of there? I feel like if those kids don't make it out of there, maybe they're Inquisitors or something. Because there's a lot of masked Inquisitors. There's the ninth sister with those head things that one girl has.
Right. Could that be little Eva?
Yeah, Eva.
Oh.
Yeah.
I like that idea.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
So
maybe it's Omega. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe she becomes an Inquisitor.
Inquisitor.
Maybe not.
Show me some failure. I want to see some failure in this show. I think that could do him some good.
All right, man. Well, thanks very much for being here. We'll take a week off next week. Will do us all a little bit of good, and then we will hit the big finale week on all cylinders, and that will be the big lead-in to May the 4th, big weekend in Bristol. So it'll be nice to get a little R&R from RFR. All right, Ty. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
See ya.
All right, Jimmy Mack, final thoughts, episode 13, lucky number 13, Into the Breach.
Into the Breach. Final thoughts. Well, this was a really straightforward episode, and I was surprised at the notes I took for this episode. There weren't too many, revelations that I felt while watching this. It was all just very on the surface and straightforward, I believe. Well, the thing we learned in this episode was, for sure, Omega did not sneak another comlink with her, as I was speculating last week, because they only scanned her upper torso. I thought maybe she had slid something into her boot or something, but nope, not happening. She has to devise a way to get out. She doesn't even realize that Crosshair failed in his attempt to shoot that tracker onto the ship. So, how would she know whether or not he was successful? I guess she figured they would have shown up by now. So she's now working on Plan B, which is taking a page right out of Escape from Alcatraz. Start picking away at the cell wall and see how far you can get. Echo calls Rampart a hydrosnake. Yeah, Tyler just mentioned that. I looked up hydrosnake to see if there was any sort of specific earth animal that's a hydrosnake. Any snake that swims in water, I guess, could be a hydrosnake. But there's an item for sale if you live in areas that get flooding a lot of times. It's a type of sandbag called a hydrosnake, which you can put around your house or something to divert flood water over other areas of the ground before it all comes into your basement. So, hey, if you're looking for a way to protect your house from rainwater with a Star Wars twist, check out Hydrosnake Water Reactive Temporary Flood Barriers. All right, that was probably the lamest analysis I've ever given of anything from Star Wars. Okay, here's something better. They're still taking blood samples from Omega and the Force-sensitive kids. Why? Why are they doing that? They do it twice a day after meals. Is there something in the meals? What's the deal with that? I would have liked to have had a little more explanation about that. One way out. There's only one way out, and Omega and the kids are going to find it, and hopefully they'll be successful next week. There's a lot of room for this show to cover right now, a lot of ground for it to cover. So I have to admit, as much as I like this episode for the tension in a couple of scenes, the scene where Omega was picking away at the wall tiles, and Skalder was coming in to check on her. There was some tension there, and also tension with attaching the shuttle to the bottom of the Imperial ship to go to Mount Tantiss. There's some interesting tension there. But that was about it. I really thought, here we are, the final 3 episodes, the last trilogy of stories for the Bad Batch. And it kind of let me down in the fact that we didn't get any big character moments. We got no large reveals. The story didn't really even move much further, except for the Batch finally are on their way to Tantiss. Took a long time to get there. So I hope that the action and the reveals, there's so much potential for this show. You drop in a Darth Vader cameo. You can have the Emperor return. You could define more and more what Project Necromancer is and what the end goal for it actually is. give us something that we can really chew on here. It's all just very, very surface level at this point of the story, and I was expecting something maybe a little bit deep. Off a pig, not in this episode.
All right, that's going to do it. That'll wrap things up. Once again, thanks to Tyler Page for screening our calls and always being there for us. Thanks to all the super chats this week. And, then just in the whole chat, everybody just bouncing ideas back and forth. That's what makes this so much fun. And I hope you enjoy it as well. As Max said earlier, no regular RFR next week. No Bad Batch after show next week. We do have a new episode of the weekly Rebel Force Radio dropping this weekend on Saturday, and that'll do it for us for a week, and then we'll come back, and there'll be just all kinds of stuff leading up to May the 4th in Bristol, including 2 episodes of the Bad Batch after show. So follow all that on our socials. You can find us on Instagram, on Facebook, and on Twitter/X. And make sure that you're subscribed to us on YouTube and get the little notification bell and all that stuff so that you know when we're going live. So that'll wrap it up for us here this week. We will see you next time on the Bad Batch After Show, and see you later this weekend on the weekly Rebel Force Radio podcast. But in the meantime, for Rebel Force Radio, I'm Jason, and
I'm Jimmy Mack.
And remember,
the Force will be with you, always.